Ladies and gentlemen, now we are ready for the keynote speeches from our special guests. So the hydrogen economy value trends and future will be laid out via diverse perspectives, while the market outlook and issues of the hydrogen industry will be elaborated on or within this depth insight through the insight which will be shared today. I expect we will be able to identify the direction Gyeonggi Province has to move in terms of the hydrogen economy. So let me introduce the first keynote speaker. Now we have Mr. Choi Hee-bong, President and CEO of Korea Gas Corporation. He will deliver his speech with a theme of the future of the Korean hydrogen economy. Please welcome him.
2020 경기국제수소포럼에 참여해 주신 여러분 안녕하십니까? 한국가스공사 사장 최희봉입니다. 먼저 귀중한 참여 기회를 주신 이재명 지사님께 감사드립니다. 오늘 저는 에너지 패러다임 전환을 준비하는 이 중요한 시기에 다가오는 미래를 맞이해 우리가 어떠한 노력을 하고 있는지 말씀드리고자 합니다. 온실가스 감축은 인류 생존의 문제입니다. 파리협약에서는 2050년까지 2010년 대비 2도씨 이하로 지구 온도 상승이 억제되도록 온실가스 감축 목표를 제시하였으며 우리나라도 2030년까지 온실가스를 37% 감축하기로 국제사회에 약속하였습니다. 온실가스 감축과 관련하여 최근 가장 주목받는 에너지가 바로 수소입니다. 현재 수소는 비싼 에너지이지만 수소는 재생에너지를 효과적으로 저장하고 운송할 수 있는 매개체이며 앞으로 기술 개발과 가격 경쟁력 확보로 기존의 화석에너지를 빠르게 대체할 것으로 기대하고 있습니다. 수소에너지는 더 이상 낯선 선택이 아닙니다. 독일과 일본 등 여러 국가에서 수소사회 전환을 위한 정책과 투자를 아끼지 않고 있으며 기업에서도 수소에너지의 성장 가능성에 주목하고 있습니다. 우리나라 또한 2019년도 수소 로드맵을 통해 수소 사회로의 진입에 대한 비전을 선포하였고 저희 가스공사도 그 큰 흐름에 동참하여 선도적 투자로 우리나라 수소 경제를 견인하고자 합니다. 또한 화석연료 기반의 자원개발 기업에서 수소 등 신에너지 기업으로의 전환을 통해 제2의 창업을 하고자 합니다. 한국 수소산업의 성공적 도약을 위해 다음 두 가지를 제안하고자 합니다. 첫째, 경제성 있는 수소를 생산할 수 있는 환경을 조성해야 합니다. 저렴한 가격에 청정 수소를 생산하고 공급함으로써 수소 산업을 활성화해야 합니다. 둘째, 수소 모빌리티 인프라를 확충해야 합니다. 수소 차량 사용자와 충전 사업자 모두에게 경제적이며 접근성 높은 충전소 인프라를 제공해야 합니다. 차량용 수소 연료는 아직 가격 경쟁력이 부족합니다. 현재 유통되는 물량의 대부분을 차지하는 부생 수소는 석유화학 공정의 부산물로 생성되는 수소로서 수소 산업을 활성화시키기 위한 충분한 물량을 제공하는 데 한계가 있습니다. 때문에 천연가스를 원료로 한 수소 생산과 재생에너지를 활용한 수소 생산의 확대가 요구됩니다. 저희 한국가스공사는 초기 수소경제 이행의 핵심 공급원이 될 천연가스를 원료로 하는 추출 수소의 원활한 공급을 위해 전국 거점 도시에 중대규모의 생산기지를 구축하여 수소 생산 원가를 낮춰 나갈 계획입니다. 또한 원활한 수소의 유통과 소비자와의 접근성을 개선하기 위해 액화수소에 대한 활성화도 필요합니다. 액화수소는 운송비가 저렴하고 도심지에도 쉽게 설치가 가능합니다. 천연가스를 원료로 하는 추출수소로 수소산업의 활성화를 모색함과 동시에 탄소 배출이 적은 그린수소를 생산할 수 있는 인프라 구축도 추진해야 합니다. 재생에너지 잉여전력을 활용한 수전의 수소 생산을 확대하고 친환경 에너지 생산과 사용에 대한 사회적 기반이 조성되어야 합니다. 장기적으로는 수소 수요 증가에 대비하여 상대적으로 재생에너지가 풍부한 해외에서 값싼 친환경 수소를 생산하여 국내에 도입하는 방안 또한 준비해야 합니다. 현재 대량의 수소를 운송할 수 있는 가장 효율적인 방안을 도출하기 위해 정부 및 국내외 기업과 공동으로 친환경 수소 수입 방안을 모색하고 있습니다. 모든 혁신적인 도전은 기술 개발의 토대 없이는 성공할 수 없을 것입니다. 세계 수소산업을 선도하기 위해서는 수소 관련 핵심 기술을 확보하는 데 국가 차원의 역량 집중이 필요합니다. 저희 한국가스공사도 친환경 수소 생산을 위한 수전의 수소 연구, 대용량 액체 수소 저장, 대량의 수소를 저렴하게 운송하기 위한 수소 배관 연구 등에 박차를 가하고 있습니다. 수소 충전소 인프라 확충은 수소 모빌리티 활성화의 당면 과제입니다. 현재 수소 충전소의 높은 구축 비용과 초기 수요 부족으로 산업 활성화에 어려움을 겪고 있으나 수소 차량 이용자와 충전소 사업자 모두가 상생할 수 있는 수소 충전소 비즈니스 모델을 만들어 수소 모빌리티 산업을 육성해 나가야 하겠습니다. 저희 한국가스공사는 민간기업과 공동으로 합작회사를 설립하여 2022년까지 100기의 수소 충전소 구축을 추진하고 있습니다. 또한 다양한 형태의 차량 충전과 에너지 생산을 겸할 수 있는 융복합 수소 충전소와 같은 혁신적인 사업 모델을 개발하여 고객과 사업자가 함께 상생할 수 있는 방안을 마련하고자 노력하고 있습니다. 앞서 말씀드린 융복합 수소 충전소는 수소 차량의 충전과 더불어 LNG 차량, 전기 차량을 충전할 수 있으며 동시에 수소 연료 전지를 통해 전기를 생산하여 운영비를 절감할 수 있는 사업 모델입니다. 향후 수소 모빌리티 수요의 40% 이상이 경기도 등 수도권에 집중될 것으로 예상되며 이러한 수요에 적시 대응할 수 있도록 계획을 착실히 마련해야 할 것입니다. 수도권 내에 효과적으로 수소 충전소 인프라를 구축하기 위해서는 인구가 밀집된 도심지와의 접근성을 개선하고 급증하는 수요에 대비할 수 있어야 합니다. 이를 위해 상대적으로 적은 면적을 차지하고 안전도 면에서 우수한 액화수소 충전소 도입을 적극 고려해 보아야 합니다. 액화수소 충전소는 적은 면적으로 초기 구축을 위한 부지 비용을 절감할 수 있고 기체수소에 비해 저장 효율이 높아 급증하는 수요에도 적절히 대응할 수 있는 장점이 있습니다. 다만 이러한 액화수소 충전소 보급을 위해서는 액화수소를 생산하는 설비 구축이 선행되어야 하는 과제가 남아 있습니다. 이를 위해 저희 한국가스공사는 경쟁력 있는 가격의 수소 및 액화수소 생산을 위해 기존 LNG 터미널과 LNG 냉열을 활용하는 방안을 모색 중에 있습니다. 공사는 이처럼 수소산업 인프라를 선도적으로 구축하기 위해 다각적인 노력을 기울이고 있으며 정부 및 지자체와의 협력을 아끼지 않을 것을 약속드리겠습니다. 한국가스공사는 천연가스 불모지에서 단기간에 세계 최고의 도시가스 보급률을 달성한 회사입니다. 한국가스공사는 지난 38년간 전국에 거쳐 LNG 생산기지와 배관망을 건설하였으며 저온의 가스를 다루는 기술과 해외 에너지 개발 경험을 축적하였습니다. 지금까지 천연가스 사업을 통해 축적한 노하우와 역량을 바탕으로 수소 생산부터 활용까지 전 밸류체인에서 수소 경제 활성화를 위해 노력하겠습니다. 우리나라는 수소 사회로의 전환이라는 긴 여정의 초입에 서 있습니다. 수소 산업의 육성을 통해 탄소 저감과 일자리 창출에 기여함으로써 산업과 고용이 함께 성장하는 사회를 만들어 가야겠습니다. 경기도에서 세계 수소 산업 시장을 선도하기 위해 많은 노력을 기울이고 계신 것으로 알고 있습니다. 이재명 경기도지사님과 관계자 여러분의 노고에 응원의 박수를 보내드립니다. 저희 한국가스공사도 수소산업 선도공기업으로서 경기도와 긴밀히 협력하여 우리나라 수소산업의 새로운 지평을 여는 데 기여할 수 있도록 최선을 다하겠습니다. 감사합니다.
Thank you very much for your wonderful speech. For the second keynote speech, we have Mr. Im Hae-jong, President and CEO of Korea Gas Safety Corporation. He will deliver his speech on the topic of realizing a safe hydrogen economy. Please welcome him.
안녕하십니까. 한국가스안전공사 사장 임혜종입니다. 먼저 오늘 2020 경기국제수소포럼에 연사로 초청해 주신 경기도와 포럼 관계자 여러분들께 감사드립니다. 저는 국내 유일의 가스안전관리 전문기관이자 정부에서 지정한 수소안전 전담기관인 한국가스안전공사를 대표하여 안전한 수소경제의 실현이라는 주제로 여러분께 말씀드리고자 합니다. 수소안전의 중요성을 다시 한번 인식하여 경기도의 수소에너지 생태 구축 비전 달성에 도움이 되길 바랍니다. 현재 세계 각국은 파리 기후협약의 이행과 온실가스 감축 등 환경 문제 해결을 위하여 화석 연료에서 저탄소 신재생 에너지로의 에너지 패러다임 전환을 꾀하고 있습니다. 이러한 점에서 수소는 친환경적이면서도 산업적 파급 효과가 대단히 큰 미래 핵심 성장 동력으로 각광받고 있습니다. 글로벌 컨설팅 회사인 맥킨지가 발표한 자료에서도 수소 산업은 연 2조 5천억 달러의 시장과 3천만 개의 신규 일자리를 창출할 수 있는 것으로 나타났습니다. 이에 우리 정부도 수소를 중요 에너지원으로 사용하도록 하는 수소경제 활성화 로드맵과 뉴딜 정책을 수립하여 수소경제를 선점하기 위한 노력을 가속화해 나가고 있습니다. 이처럼 수소에너지에 대한 전 세계적인 관심이 고조되고 있는 상황에서 개최된 오늘 국제수소포럼은 경기도의 수소경제 추진에 대한 의지를 대내적으로 널리 알리는 좋은 계기가 될 것이라고 생각합니다. 원자번호 1번인 수소는 기술적 난이도는 높지만 우주물질의 75%를 차지할 정도로 지역적 편중이 없는 보편적 에너지원이며 오염물질을 배출하지 않는 환경 친화적인 에너지원입니다. 수소는 가장 가볍고 눈에 보이지도 않을 뿐만 아니라 냄새도 또한 없습니다. 그래서 국민 여러분께서도 수소하면 일단 위험하다는 인식을 가지고 계신 것으로 알고 있습니다. 그러나 수소는 실제 노출되었을 때 다른 가스보다 쉽게 하늘로 날아가는 속성을 가지고 있어 가스별 화재 발생 위험성을 종합적으로 검토해 볼 때 화석연료인 가솔린, LPG, 도시가스에 비해 위험도가 낮다는 미국 화학공학학회 연구 결과도 있습니다. 또한 수소는 석유화학, 정유, 반도체, 식품 등 다양한 산업 현장에서 오랜 기간 사용되어 왔으며 안전하게 관리되고 있습니다. 정부의 비전인 세계 최고 수준의 수소경제 선도국가로 도약을 위해 가장 중요한 것이 안전성 확보입니다. 특히 2019년 5월에 발생한 강릉 테크노파크 수소 저장 탱크 폭발 사고에 대한 안전성 우려를 불식시킬 수 있는 대책 마련이 대단히 중요합니다. 이에 정부에서는 작년 12월 민관 전문가 의견 수렴, 수소 시설에 대한 실태조사, 사고 분석 등을 통해 세계 최고 수준의 수소 안전관리 종합대책을 수립하였으며 4대 분야 12개 중점과제를 통해 안전과 산업이 균형 발전하는 수소 강국을 실현하고자 합니다. 그중 일부를 소개해드리면 우선 수소 충전소, 수소연료 전지시설, 수소 생산기지를 3대 핵심 시설로 지정하여 위험성 평가, 정밀안전진단, 이중 모니터링 시스템 구축 등의 중점 안전관리를 추진하고 있습니다. 또한 안전인력 양성 5개년 계획과 안전관리 10대 기술 조기 개발 등을 통해 지속가능한 안전생태계를 조성하기 위해 노력하고 있습니다. 한편 수소안전관리 사각지대를 없애고자 지난 2월에는 수소경제 육성 및 수소안전에 관한 법률이 제정되었습니다. 이 수소법은 우리나라가 세계 최초로 제정한 것으로 수소산업 기반 조성을 위한 선제적인 조치로 평가받고 있습니다. 현재 동법 시행규칙의 하위법령 제정을 진행하고 있으며 저압 수소시설과 수소용품의 검사를 위한 상세 기준을 속도감 있게 준비하고 있습니다. 또한 금년 7월 수수법에 근거하여 우리 가스안전공사는 정부로부터 수소안전 전담기관으로 지정되었습니다. 수소안전 전담기관의 역할은 수소시설 및 수소용품에 대한 안전기준 조사, 연구 및 기술개발, 안전에 관한 교육 및 홍보, 사고 예방에 관한 기술개발 및 지원, 국제협력 등이 있습니다. 저희 공사는 가스안전 분야의 46년 경험과 노하우, 전문성을 바탕으로 국민으로부터 수소 안전성에 대한 신뢰를 확보하고 기업에는 안전관리 역량 및 자율적 안전문화를 정착할 수 있도록 수소 안전관리에 최선을 다하겠습니다. 수소 경제가 활성화되면 수소의 사용량과 수소 시설이 증가하게 될 것입니다. 수소가 안전하고 사용이 편리한 연료로 우리 국민들에게 다가갈 수 있도록 수소 생산 단계에서부터 사용 단계까지 전 주기 안전관리 체계를 구축하고 정부와 민간이 다 같이 합동하여 안전관리를 실행해 나가도록 하겠습니다. 저희 한국가스안전공사는 확고한 안전관리 원칙을 기반으로 안전과 관련된 것이면 아주 사소한 것도 소홀히 하지 않고 촘촘한 그물망과 같은 안전관리를 실현하고자 합니다. 이를 통해 세계에서 가장 안전한 수소 인프라를 구축하여 수소 경제에 있어서의 국제적 경쟁 우위를 공고히 다지고 국민의 안전 확보에도 최선의 노력을 다하겠습니다. 끝으로 오늘 수소 안전에 대하여 발언할 수 있는 기회를 주신 경기도와 경기 국제수소 포럼 관계자 여러분께 다시 한번 감사 말씀 올립니다.
Thank you so much for your speech. Now we have prepared several keynote speeches from abroad. So firstly, we have Dr. John William Sheffield, President of the International Association for Hydrogen Energy and professor at Purdue University. He will deliver his speech with a theme of Global Trends of the Hydrogen Economy. Please welcome him.
Hello, this is John Sheffield. The title of my presentation is Global Trends on Hydrogen Economy Market. I am a professor from Purdue University in West Lafayette, Indiana, United States. I also serve as the president of the International Association for Hydrogen Energy. I'm excited to share with you some of my personal thoughts on global trends in the hydrogen economy market. First, the outline. We have three sections today: section coupling in the energy industry, transition to green hydrogen, and hydrogen economy market. The new term is sector coupling. When we consider power sector, heat consumption sectors, transportation sectors, gas producing sectors, energy storage, heat storage, gas storage, fuel storage, and the connections, the sector coupling, comes from the power to X. So, for example, in the electric power sector, it means electrifying transport, heat consumption, and every sector which hasn't already been electrified. Also, for the gas production sector, it means the opposite, delivering green hydrogen via power to gas, or power to hydrogen, as we might say. Also, for the transportation sector, it means everything, all of the previous, all of the above. So let's look at how this becomes integrated. The sector integration. Green hydrogen offers valuable advantages. For example, if we have offshore wind or onshore wind energy, renewable, solar PV, through the grid we can go feed that renewable electricity to electrolyze water and take that hydrogen into storage, and when needed, that hydrogen can be fed to the fuel cells to produce power again. Therefore, we call this sector approach integration as power to power. Alternative, we could take the renewable electricity, that power, to electrolyze water to generate hydrogen and use that as injection into natural gas distribution system. Or an alternative is to take that green hydrogen and produce through a methanation process a synthetic natural gas. So we have this segue of a power to gas pathway. Another pathway is to take the renewable energy from the grid and power industry, electrolysis, producing the hydrogen, and using that in industry or in other applications, power to industry. Another pathway is power to fuel, taking the renewable electricity, electrolyzing water, and taking that to use in industry that has the fuel, the fossil fuel equivalent. Another pathway is power to mobility, electrolyzing water from renewable electricity and using that fuel, that hydrogen, to fuel fuel cell vehicles such as cars, buses, trains, boats, and ships. The Hydrogen Council suggested that hydrogen has 7 major roles in the sectors, 3 that enable renewable energy systems, and 4 to decarbonize end uses. First, it enables large-scale renewable integration and power generation. Second, distribute energy across sectors and regions. And 3, act as a buffer to increase system resilience. 4, to help decarbonize transportation sector. 5, help decarbonize industrial energy use sector. 6, help decarbonize building heat and power. And finally, serve as renewable feedstocks. The annual demand for hydrogen could increase by a factor of 10 by the year 2050, from approximately 8 ecajoules in 2015 to 78 ecajoules in 2050, with the largest growth occurring in the transportation sector. At the top, we see the power generation, and in transportation at 22 ecajoules, the largest, and industrial energy, followed by building heat and power. And finally, the 2 components, existing feedstock and new feedstock. The new feedstock would be direct reduced iron and carbon capture utilization. Transitioning now into green hydrogen, section 2. The transition to green hydrogen is important for us. We see in this chart multiple pathways for the production of hydrogen ranging from green, gray, blue, brown, and the last one from the local electric power grid. Let's turn our attention to the green pathway, produce green hydrogen. If the electricity comes from renewable energies, the hydrogen is known as green hydrogen. That is to say, renewable electricity electrolyzes water to produce that hydrogen, the green hydrogen. Next, we can look at hydrogen that's produced using various other methods, such as brown and gray hydrogen result in large emissions of carbon dioxide. So we see the natural gas steam methane reforming to produce gray hydrogen. We also see coal using coal gasification to produce brown hydrogen. However, if we take natural gas steam methane reforming process and go through the carbon capture and storage, we get blue hydrogen. Similarly, if we take coal going through the coal gasification, using the carbon capture and storage technology, we have another pathway to produce blue hydrogen. The blue hydrogen is a low carbon process because of that carbon capture and storage. Now, let's turn our attention to the technology that we referred to in the sector coupling in the previous section. That is to say, power to gas. In this case, we have the future state of blending hydrogen into the natural gas distribution system to offset the carbon content of the fuel. The green hydrogen as an energy storage to ensure a constant and reliable source or supply of electricity. The surplus electricity from the renewable wind power plants and the renewable solar power plants must be stored for later use. So in the schematic we see from the grid, in which case we may have renewable electricity from that microgrid, providing the electricity for electrolysis of water. The emission from that process is oxygen. The hydrogen is then compressed and stored, and then when needed it can use the natural gas distribution system to provide the end use. Let's turn our attention in this green hydrogen to Europe's Hydrogen Roadmap 2050. The European Union Hydrogen Strategy in May 2020, the European Union announced funding up to 30 billion euros to produce 1 million metric tons of green hydrogen per year as part of the Economic Recovery Plan to continue its Green Deal and to confirm that the European Union sees hydrogen as a key enabler in the goal to become carbon neutral by the year 2050. If we look at the first phase in the year 2020 through 2024, it includes the installation of 6 gigawatts of renewable hydrogen electrolyzers. Also in that phase 1 is the production of clean hydrogen, and in addition, the policy work and euro denomination benchmarks by 2021. The second and perhaps the most important phase is 2025 through 2030, with a higher of 40 gigawatt capacity of electrolyzers, higher production of clean hydrogen, hydrogen storage for seasonal flexibility, and retrofitting of existing fossil fuel-based hydrogen production methods with carbon capture and storage. Phase 3, in the years 2031 through 2050, we increase the renewable electricity production, use of hydrogen and its derivatives across a wider transportation sectors, and the creation of biogas from hydrogen paired with carbon capture storage to generate negative emissions. This is the Europe's Hydrogen Roadmap 2050, 3 phases. Now let's turn our attention to the hydrogen economy market. And as the title of the presentation, we're looking at global trends on the hydrogen economy market. One might ask the question, what has changed in the hydrogen economy market? That's a good question. Let's break that down into multiple parts. First, the global commitment to mitigate climate change and to focus on climate regulations is much stronger now than at any time previously in history. This is an important aspect of what has changed. Second, renewable energy costs have declined dramatically and are continuing to fall, significantly reducing the price gap between hydrogen from electrolysis, green hydrogen that is to say, and hydrogen derived from fossil fuels that, as we referred to, are gray and brown. Third, what has changed? Hydrogen and fuel cell technologies have experienced significant technical progress in their efficiency, durability, reliability, and cost reduction. This, of course, is critical and paramount to the success of the hydrogen economy market. And finally, the global transition towards electric mobility solutions. As we saw in the 2050 projections, that the largest component was in the electrification and the transportation sector. So as we think of the hydrogen mobility as an extended range of the electric mobility solutions. The message from Europe voters and those too young to vote is loud and clear. They want real action on climate change, and they want Europe to lead the way. This provides countries like South Korea a great opportunity to impact the hydrogen economy market. Leading the way, the European Union adopted strategies for energy system integration in hydrogen, paving the way towards a more efficient and interconnected energy sector, driven by twin goals of a cleaner planet and a stronger economy. Remember those in the earlier sections, the sector coupling. The European Green Deal aims to make Europe the first climate neutral continent by 2050. Currently, energy production and use account for more than 75% of the European Union greenhouse gas emissions. More than 75% of EU's greenhouse gas emissions. There are hydrogen economy market opportunities to increase the use of renewable electricity via electrification of the sectors that currently still rely on fossil fuels. Again, the most important part is this sector coupling. That is the game changer in the hydrogen economy market, sector coupling. If we reflect, 2020 will forever be remembered as the year of COVID-19. It has been a period of challenge and of hardship, but also a profound mindset change. The global pandemic has impacted nearly everyone and forced more of us to reflect on what we want our future societies to look like, as it becomes increasingly clear that business as usual is not an option. As countries invest in economic recovery, we must invest in a world we want, not the world we have.
Thank you so much for your speech, Dr. Sheffield. And now Dr. Fiona Simon, CEO of the Australian Hydrogen Council, is ready for you. So she will deliver her speech about strategies for nurturing the hydrogen industry. Please welcome her.
Hello, I'm Fiona Simon, the CEO of the Australian Hydrogen Council. It's my pleasure to be speaking with you today. The Australian Hydrogen Council, or AHC, is the peak body for the emerging hydrogen industry in Australia. We connect industry participants with one another and with the industry stakeholders so we can work together to build a clean and resilient energy future with hydrogen as a key part of the energy mix. We started as Hydrogen Mobility Australia, which was formed in 2017. In October last year, we changed our name to the Australian Hydrogen Council to reflect the diversity of our growing membership and the broad hydrogen agenda. We have 54 members at the moment, and I'm pleased to say we are ever growing. We even had 5 members join just in this last week. As you can see, our members are companies, and they're spread across energy, transport, technology, consulting, finance, investment, and the chemicals industries. And this reflects the true versatility of hydrogen. Our members have come together because we share a view that the hydrogen industry shows particular promise for Australia. We have the land mass, solar penetration to create green hydrogen and clean hydrogen at scale. We have experience, particularly in oil and gas export and in renewable energy. The Australian investment in renewables was in the top 10 globally last year. We also have the intellectual resources, and we're seeing that with a comprehensive hydrogen research program developing across the country. Australia also has strong economic growth and provides a safe and low-risk environment to invest and do business. So the Australian Hydrogen Council's activities are spread over 3 main overlapping areas. First, we work in the policy space and on all of the key matters relating to our emerging hydrogen industry. You'll see here the 3 licenses to operate, which we use as a basic policy framework. Second, we work with the different industry parties, with governments, regulators and academics, and we also work with other industry associations, both in Australia and overseas. We have, for example, a memorandum of understanding with H2 Korea. Third, we share what we do and think with everyone we work with, and we provide events and means of connecting with one another in the hydrogen ecosystem. Returning to the title of this presentation, each of these three areas is a strategy to foster the hydrogen industry. Policy and regulation create the foundations. Working with others, that is the relationships, allow us to connect and find ways to collaborate. And the events and public advocacy, like this event, provide an important means of developing these relationships and to share thinking. So I'll spend the rest of my presentation today really on the policy and the regulatory side and the important things we need to address within that category. However, the idea of collaborating and sharing is always relevant. And I keep saying to people, many of us are saying, that what we have is a jigsaw. We need to find a way to put all of those pieces together and maybe even join different jigsaws, such as between Australia and South Korea. And it's all possible, but it also involves sustained effort to share information. It's quite a large coordination effort across geographic, system and sector boundaries. So the Australian Hydrogen Council, we have a role to play in bringing parties together, help making the connections, helping lay the foundations so the industry can start building and get to scale. So we help put the jigsaw together along with everyone else. So returning now to policy and regulation and the key elements of these, we look at this as being the 3 licenses to operate. So these 3 licenses to operate are about the foundations of the industry. They all need to be present for a sustainable hydrogen industry. They also support and interact with one another. As you can see, the licenses to operate are the economic license, where the industry needs to get to scale. And importantly, we need to move beyond demonstrations and pilots and feasibility studies. They are all welcome, and they have their place, but we need to move beyond. Then there's social license, which allows for trusted customer and community relationships. It's particularly vital for regional projects. Then there's the regulatory license, where the industry needs stable, meaningful and efficient regulatory settings to set expectations and to do business. So the overall policy picture for hydrogen in Australia starts with the Australian National Hydrogen Strategy, or the NHS, which was released in November last year. This was agreed to by our federal government and each of our 8 state and territory governments. The NHS sets out 57 government agreements about what needs to occur to develop the industry. They're themed around 7 areas, and this includes national coordination, developing production capacity and local demand, responsive regulation, international engagement, innovation, skills and community confidence. The agreements also consider hydrogen across all of its major applications, so export markets, transport, industrial use, gas networks and electricity systems. The government has set up a team to implement the priority actions, and the team works with the jurisdictional governments as well. The current priorities for implementation are, number 1, hydrogen certification. So that's where the customer of a hydrogen producer should know how the hydrogen was made and its carbon emissions. And you might know that term as a guarantee of origin as well. Then there's gas blending. So that's hydrogen blending into the natural gas networks. Our southern states in particular have quite a strong reliance on gas for heating and cooking. So if we're able to decarbonise, then by putting clean and green hydrogen to substitute for methane, then that's a great thing to do. So but there are regulatory and technical issues with how we're able to achieve that and by when. And obviously there's also relationships with overseas trading partners, and that very much includes South Korea. We've also seen funding developments with our renewable energy agency, ARENA, currently working with a shortlisted group of project proponents to use $70 million Australia worth of funding. There's also concessional finance available from government entity called the Clean Energy Finance Corporation. And this group has $300 million to spend in concessional finance for hydrogen. And thankfully, the Australian government also very recently announced $1.9 billion Australian as an investment package to show, and that shows significant support for hydrogen. It is including a guaranteed baseline funding for ARENA, that renewable energy agency that provides funding, of $1.43 billion over 10 years. Now, this is not specifically for hydrogen, but hydrogen is very much a clear priority. So we, the Australian Hydrogen Council and our members, we're working with governments to get the NHS implemented, and we're also working on how to connect it with other government ambitions in hydrogen. So last month, the Australian government also released its first low emissions technology statement. And this addresses the range of technologies to reduce emissions, including hydrogen. I've reflected the key highlights in this slide that comes straight from the report. An important outcome of this work for our industry for hydrogen is a target of H2 under 2. And that means the production of a kilo of clean hydrogen for less than $2 Australian. So currently the cost of hydrogen is multiples of that. So we have a way to go. However, we think we can get there. Further on policy, the Australian states and territories have also been developing their own approaches to hydrogen, with all having released or currently working on strategies or plans that demonstrate their particular priorities. So this slide shows several of these publications. If you go to our website, there are links to them all. We are also expecting to see a New South Wales hydrogen strategy out early in 2021 and a Victorian industry development plan around the same time. The states and territories also provide funding. They provide funding amounts to encourage and support hydrogen projects in their regions. We're also seeing governments pursuing the idea of hydrogen hubs, which we're defining in Australia as really the physical co-location of hydrogen production and use, and ideally near major ports for export. And the states of Western Australia, Queensland, South Australia and Tasmania have announced a particular keenness to house export hubs, and there's been work to test the market and develop export plans. It's not limited to just those jurisdictions though. Victoria, I think New South Wales and the Northern Territory are likely to get in on that as well. So we do have several policy pieces across the nation, and the two main objectives right now relate to export, with the NHS objective for Australia to be a top 3 exporter by 2030, and those jurisdictional plans I mentioned just now, but also getting the prices down, where we have the low emissions technology statement stretch target of H2 under 2. So the way we at AHC look at that is how can we put these pieces together and then map how we get there? So we're working on that right now. We're developing a view using hydrogen volumes that consulting firm Deloitte prepared for the National Hydrogen Strategy. The Deloitte figures are not forecasts, they are scenarios. And I've shown the two most positive ones in this graph. We've been speaking with stakeholders for some months now to test views about whether we can link these numbers and the H2 under 2 target to establish a plausible goal for 2030. And at this stage, there's been a basic agreement, this basic consensus that the Deloitte figures could be compatible with H2 under 2 by 2030, and therefore Australia being a top 3 exporter. I do note the most optimistic scenario that Deloitte has put forward sees Australian production of 1.8 megatons of hydrogen by 2030, which is a significant volume. And we're currently developing views about the scale of the projects required to get there and the policy that's required to encourage and support those production objectives. Of course, when we're looking at supply and demand, at the other end of policy is the demand side. How do we drive demand? In the longer term, we can see hydrogen exported, we can see it being blended into the natural gas networks to substitute for methane, and there are important steps with hydrogen use in industrial applications and remote area power systems. We looked at the domestic outlook and considered where the early adopters could be and found that it's very much about replacing diesel, and transportation then is key. And for us, it's about heavy road trucking, it's buses, the back to base segment typically operated by public agencies, and so we can try to get policy driven procurement, and light commercial vehicles, which again covers vehicle fleets and back to base fleets and can help us with the policy side, with procurement. Now, this view is not new. It's entirely consistent with the broader view that's been in Australia for a while. This slide is a famous slide in Australia. It is repeatedly shown at conferences. It is from our 2018 Hydrogen Roadmap, which was developed by Australia's scientific agency, the CSIRO. So in terms of strategies to support the industry, and particularly uptake in transport, governments can provide the right signals by setting targets and reducing unnecessary barriers to uptake for vehicles. They can help create the demand that then draws through private investment in vehicles and infrastructure. And of course, this is not new to you. South Korea has set targets and has also prioritised transport applications. We don't have those policies in Australia yet, though. Of course, the notion of standards and targets then links to regulation. So I'll move to the regulatory licence. This slide provides an overview of the complexity of regulation in hydrogen, or at least the potential complexity when you account for the versatility of hydrogen and its range of applications. For effective and meaningful hydrogen industry regulation, we need to identify, to possibly update, and to certainly connect different regulations to help regulators and industry prepare for hydrogen to be produced and used. So the Australian Hydrogen Council has just started a regulator mapping exercise. So not the regulations, not the rules themselves, but the categories of regulation and the regulators. And I'm hoping we can start to reduce some of the complexity with this regulatory outreach and connecting those relevant entities. And we're certainly keen to share information in our work with South Korea on common areas and issues. There's also a need to develop engagement approaches for communications and for information for a range of different purposes. And this goes to support the social licence. It's vital that any country moving to a hydrogen economy is able to bring consumers and communities along. The AHC, Australian Hydrogen Council, we're developing an industry undertaking at the moment to guide the development of our hydrogen industry. And really the idea is to specify those principles for how we safeguard the community, how we communicate issues, and how we engage with regulators. We've got a working group of members and representatives from governments and from academia. We've surveyed members and stakeholders, and we've also looked at similar undertakings from other industries, including mining, renewable energy, and finance. We have had draft principles out for consultation with members and industry stakeholders, and we're also developing a guidance document for industry about the principles. And separately, we're planning a broader suite of fact sheets and communications materials that cover the sorts of issues that are raised in this slide. The good news is there's much we can learn from, there's much we can adopt. We don't need to start from scratch. We can look at other industries and other countries. And so the hydrogen ecosystem is not lacking in people with the experience and the appetite to do things. We're just looking at connecting those different parts. So to wrap up, we are at a defining point in history. As the world moves to decarbonise, we have a chance to boost our resilience to economic and environmental shocks using clean and green hydrogen in the energy mix. It'll take time though, and it will require coordination, and collaboration is everything. So we're working hard with our members in Australia and with our partners globally, and today's session continues this important work. I've shown some links here to key Australian websites. So these are great resources. We have links and further information on our website as well. I do want you to note in particular the first link to High Resource. This actually was launched just this week, and it shows all of the announced and current hydrogen industry and research projects in Australia. So it's great to have everything in one place. I certainly welcome further contact with anyone at this event, and I would be happy to make introductions. So please do feel free to contact me, and my details are on this last slide. So thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your speech, Dr. Simon. What great speeches from the speakers. Thank you once again for your speeches. They inspired us to think about the future direction that the hydrogen economy needs to move forward. Ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to the end of the opening ceremony of the Gyeonggi International Hydrogen Forum 2020. And also, having been part of the opening ceremony, I realized that Korea needs to enhance its hydrogen economy to be competitive and distinctive in global market. To that end, we all have to work together. It is time to wrap up the opening ceremony of the Gyeonggi International Hydrogen Forum 2020. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your attention and participation. The opening ceremony ends here. The forum will last until afternoon session. Thank you so much, and this has been Sun Young-jung.